Guys, check it out. I've got this EG4 set up here, but I have now completed this massive expansion bank of batteries. 16 additional 12-volt, 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries connected in series, all feeding into this system. So now I actually have more battery capacity here on these shelves than that one wall mount battery. And depending on your situation, this can be very cost effective as opposed to getting stuff like that. Anyway, let's take a deep dive and see how this all works. Just a quick overview. I get a lot of random batteries sent to me for testing and review. So I'm putting them to good use here. But essentially, all of these batteries are feeding up here, and I've got these 1000 amp bus bars, and this allows me to connect the charge inverter, all of these batteries, into this system right here. I'm going to get into some calculations at the end of the video, but you may be surprised at what a little extra sweat equity can result in terms of overall cost savings, doing a little more of a DIY setup like this, as opposed to buying something like that. The other star of the show is this right here. This is an active battery balancer from litime, and it keeps all of these batteries balanced. Each bank of 4 batteries that you see here, each of them has an active balancer connected to them, so they all stay in sync with each other. These shelves work really, really well because I've got full access to the top of the batteries here to hook them up. I'm able to just take this piece of material that came with the shelves and just insert it like that, and you're ready for the next level of batteries. I'm going to leave a link below to Windy Nation, who I got this battery cable from. I bought it with my own money. And anyway, they do a really nice job with their cables. I really like it. And they include some nice terminals and some nice heat shrink as well. So anyway, definitely provide really nice service. Okay, I need to fabricate a couple of battery cables. It's very simple and easy. Just need a couple of tools. You need some kind of cable cutter. You need a stripping tool. To crimp on new lugs, you're going to need a crimping tool. And then to put the heat shrink on, you're going to need either a heat gun or propane torch, butane torch, something along those lines that creates a good amount of heat. This part seems intimidating to people, but it's actually really quite easy. So let me show you this. I have this battery cable here that's about 22-ish inches long. And what I've done is marked it because I'm going to cut this into 3 pieces. So I'm just going to take these cutters, put them in my mark here, and then we're just going to cut the cable. Nice cut, easy as that. Okay, next we've just got to strip this, and basically what I like to do is just hold the ring terminal on so that I can kind of see how far this cable is going to go in, and then I just take a Sharpie and mark where I want to strip to. And with that marked, I'll just take this. This has a razor blade inside of it, and I use the larger size. You may or may not be able to see, but I've just positioned that blade on the mark on the wire. And then there's a little arrow right here that tells you the direction of rotation. So we'll just do one full revolution around, and then the insulation will just slide right off. And the awesome thing is that stripper is calibrated to do this, so you don't end up cutting a whole bunch of strands of wire or anything like that. Okay, now we can just fit the ring terminal over it. Make sure you get all strands inside. You can see because we marked it ahead of time, it fits just right. This is a hydraulic crimping tool, and I would highly recommend getting one of these as opposed to the kind that you hit with like a hammer or something. I think the hydraulic crimps are far superior. I'm going to show you how this crimper works before I put the wire in. So you put these dies in. This kit, and I'll have a link for it down in the description below, has a whole bunch of different sizes of crimping die. So anyway, this is the correct size for our 2-gauge wire, and you put the wire in between those points, and then you just twist this knob here on this side so that it's allowing it to build pressure. And then you just pump this handle, and what happens, it's going slow because I'm trying to do this one-handed, but I don't know, can you see that plunger right there? There's a plunger there, a piston, and that comes and it will eventually crush those 2 dies and the wire and its connection in between them, and that is what creates the crimp. And forgive me if it's a bad angle. My hand's in the way. I do have to kind of hold this in position. And some of you may have great ideas for how to hold that while you're waiting for the crimping dies to come together, but and there you go. You can see crimp marks on it. We'll give it a good tug, make sure nothing's coming off. I'm pulling the insulation back because I'm pulling so hard. So that is done. Super fast, super easy. Okay, now with that end crimped on, we're going to just put some heat shrink on. So we'll just slide that on like that, and then we'll just get the heat gun here. And we're just going to heat shrink it. See how there's some glue inside that heat shrink, and you can see it's melted and kind of smushed out. So that just locks everything into place. It's quite fun and oddly satisfying to do the heat shrink. I quite enjoy it. Let's talk about safety and overcurrent protection for just a second. Now, because I am mixing different brands and different age cells every single battery gets its own fuse. This is a Victron fuse. It's rated for 125 amps. So that's slightly more than what some of these BMS units are rated at. Okay? All fuses are not created equal. Be sure and get one that's rated for the voltage. Notice that I've got, hopefully you can see, but right there, this fuse is rated for 80 volts. This is a 48 volt pack, so you can't use fuses that are rated for only 12 or 24 volts, or 36 volts. When this is fully charged, we're knocking on the door of 58 volts, 59 volts. We need something that is capable of carrying up to that voltage. So this 80 volt fuse is great. So you'll see me install this on every single battery. Then every string, you'll notice, every string of 4 batteries, the main positive from each battery bank, goes through a breaker right here. This is a UL listed DC circuit breaker. Got a link for it down in the description in case you're interested in it. But notice that it's a 100 amp breaker. And remember that fuse was 125 amp. So the hope is that if there was an overcurrent problem, this breaker would trip, ideally before the fuse blows. And even though these batteries are rated for a full 100 amps of discharge, I don't want to go over that at all. So that's why I've gone with the 100 amp breaker. Same thing with this. Be sure and get breakers that are rated for the voltage you're using, because not all breakers are created equal. So all the batteries are going to come into this central location, and I've got a positive bus bar, and the negative bus bar is right back here. So all of the strings of batteries are going to connect to this, and this is also where my charge inverter connects, and where the main, you can see the big cable right here, that's the main negative that goes into the bus bars on this wall mount battery, and in turn feeds the inverter. Well, notice right back here, on the main positive, leaving this bus bar, I've got a T-class fuse. That's a 250 amp T-class fuse. So if there's something catastrophic that happened, I've got 3 levels of protection. So something should blow or trip here before anything overloads or gets hot or anything. I've also gone kind of ham on the cabling. This is 2 gauge. Okay, now before hooking these up into series, and especially before connecting them and powering them up with the rest of the system, we need to be sure and fully charge these batteries to 100%. I've got a little battery charger here, and I'm going to top these all off. Let me show you what comes in the box. Very simple. You get the balancer itself. The leads are pre-attached to it. You also get a little baggie of mounting hardware, and then you get some documentation. It's very simple to connect to this balancer. The only thing is you need to be sure and connect it in the proper sequence. So if you look at these images, it's showing us 24 volt series system, 36 volt, and then we've got a 48 volt series and even series parallel. Notice in all these scenarios, especially this 24 volt, this is an easy one to see. See, if you're looking at the balancer right side up, you start from the left and work your way over to the right. So that's the proper sequence to connect them. So start from the left of the balancer and work your way right. We're doing a 48 volt system, so we're going to start with this far left one and work our way over to the right. I've got the balancer here, and as we saw, we've got to work left to right. So I'm going to have this be battery 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see that I've got the leads for that balancer already kind of laid out on the batteries that it's supposed to go. Before I hook this balancer up, we should probably check the voltage of these cells. All right, this first cell, 13.97. The second one, 13.99. Next one, 13.92, and this next one, even though this was discharged, this is 13.2. So anyway, quite a bit difference between that one and these other ones. So let's just see what this balancer can do for us. I've got my main negative right here, ready to go, and I've got my main positive right here, ready to go. You can watch me hook this up. Okay, now we'll just check, make sure we've got, 55.7 volts. Okay, it has been a few days. Let's see what this balancer has been able to do with these batteries. So this first battery here, 13.30. This second battery, 13.31, 13.31, and 13.31. So they are 100% equalized. So I think the balancer is doing its job, even with this hodgepodge of different age, different brand cells, etc. It's doing a fantastic job. Let's put a load on this. None of these batteries here on this rack have a pre-charge resistor circuit built in. So we're going to utilize this battery that does to do the initial charge of the capacitors in this, and then once that's charged up, we'll go ahead and click on all the breakers. So first we're going to turn this breaker on, and make sure that the breaker for this big battery is on. All of these are in the off position. You can see little yellow thing sticking out. So then we can go ahead and power up the BMS. That's going to do the pre-charge circuitry to the inverter. So then we can go ahead and click these additional batteries on now too. All right, all of those are on. Let's come over here to this inverter and power it on. And we're on. That's going to make this start inverting. And now I need to go to my main breaker panel. I've got an interlock kit in there. This is a sub panel, so I'm going to go take care of that quick. And I'll be back when the power is out here. Okay, and now we should be able to just come here to this breaker and hit it. We're running off inverter power. I don't know if you can see, we're just under 800 watts. And I've pulled up the app for this small mini battery here on the end. This is from WattCycle. And if you take a look here, right there, it's only drawing 22 watts out of that battery. My air conditioner just kicked on. You can see we're now pulling about 2,500 watts. So while we've got a little bit of a heavier load, let's check the voltage on these and just see what they're doing. Okay, this first one here, 13.11, 13.17, 13.19, and 13.18. So this last one here is a little lower than all of these others. So that's with things actively being drawn down on this. And that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to pull it down a couple of times, charge it up a couple of times, and then let it sit and see if this can bring them all back into equalization. Because that's the goal with this. That way you can maximize the capacity of your battery bank. If you guys are doing a similar setup, but are doing it in a place that gets below freezing, you definitely may want to check out a battery like this from litime. This one has a self-heating function, and so it's able to continue to charge even in sub-freezing conditions because it will self-heat and protect itself from damage due to the cold. Anyway, I've had this for quite some time. Obviously, it's here in this big bank, participating and very nicely with the rest of the stuff I've got going here. But that is a very strong contender if you guys want to be able to have this function in sub-freezing conditions. If for some reason you do not need the heating capacity, you live in a warm climate or it's in a warm insulated space, then you could forego the heating aspect and save some money actually, and just get a basic battery. And that's the awesome thing with this setup. You're able to customize it very, very well to your specific case. If you need self-heating batteries, you can get self-heating batteries. If you don't need that, save yourself some money and don't get that feature, and then you're not paying for stuff that you don't necessarily need. So I think there's some advantages to this. Let's talk a little bit more about cost advantage here. Much like me, where I've got a hodgepodge of different batteries and stuff, you're not going to get maximum performance out of them if you do it this way. I want that to be clear. If you want absolute maximum performance, you should have everything matched, okay? But there's substantial cost savings to be had if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of performance. It's not much, but a little bit of performance, and just buy stuff that is priced the best at any given time. I'm going to leave a link for this spreadsheet down in the description below, but this is a list of all the 12-volt batteries that I've tested and that you saw sitting on those shelves, along with their links and any discount codes I may have for them. If we look, at the time of making this video, the Seacon battery is the least expensive of the batteries here. So if we just do some simple math, it's pretty amazing the kind of money we're talking about saving. To purchase 4 of those batteries, as well as 2-gauge cable, 20 feet of it, you may not need that much. That's 10 feet of both colors, and technically 2 gauge is overkill. But anyway, I'm going to go overkill here for you, but you could potentially even save a little money on this. But 20 feet of 2-gauge cable, a battery breaker, a battery balancer, and a pack of 5 Victron fuses. That comes to a total of $790.44. Then you need to spend some money on one-time costs. So, the battery shelves, T-class fuse, the fuse holder, the bus bars, some M8 bolts, cable crimper, cable stripper. That comes all to a total of $406.79. So let's just do some fun math here. If I were to take this, multiply it by 3, and then add this to it, because again, this is just a one-time cost, that gives us 15.36 kilowatt hours. And that comes to a total of $2,778.11 at the time of making this video. Well, check this out. If you were to buy an EG4 wall-mount indoor battery from Signature Solar, they're going to charge you shipping for that, and it's only 14.3 kilowatt hours. So you get an entire kilowatt hour of additional storage off of these batteries here. But check that out, $3,899.95. So if we were to look at the difference, we've got a savings by going this route, plus an additional kilowatt hour of battery storage, and the savings is $1,121.84. That's pretty substantial. So even though you have to get a few extra parts and pieces, there's a lot of savings to be had. And a lot of these things, you get to use over and over and over again. So that's what I'm saying. This is very advantageous cost-wise, because you can go through and find whatever battery is on sale and take advantage of that, and you're not locked into any one particular brand or type of battery. That's the other nice thing about this, is this really opens up the door to you to be able to use whatever's available for the best price. You're not locked into one specific thing necessarily. Again, these are just my thoughts and my philosophies. it is not necessarily recommended by any of these manufacturers that you do that and mix and match batteries, okay? So do that at your own risk and be sure and have proper overcurrent protection. Another recipe for success here. Do not, whatever you do, daisy chain these together. So let's say I have these 4 and then they come up and run in parallel with those 4. Do what I've done here and do a home run all the way back to a central bus bar and keep all of your cables the same length across the board. So that's my furthest bank of batteries away, so that's what determined my cable length. So even though this one's substantially closer, I've just coiled up some excess back there, but it has the exact same length cables on both sides as this one does that's furthest away. If you don't do that, what you're going to end up having issues with is current sharing. Already you're going to have a little bit of issues with that because the resistance in this battery is going to be less than the resistance of these batteries through their cables, through the bus bar, and there's a number of different connections and distance that this power has to travel versus that power. So you're going to have a little bit of current sharing issues, but you can substantially reduce that by having your central bus bars. Okay, it's been about a week or so now, and I've cycled this battery bank twice now, and I cut it off from recharging when it was about 89% state of charge, and then I've just let this sit for about a day now, 24 hours, and I'm going to just see what the voltage is on these 4 batteries and see if they're close to the same voltage, and then we'll know that this active balancer is doing its job and making it so that these batteries are completely maintenance free, always deliver full capacity because they're getting balanced. So we'll start here, 13.32, 13.32, 13.31, 13.32. They're basically exactly the same. So the balancer is doing exactly what it's supposed to do and keeping them all perfectly in line. So yeah, if you do this with multiple separate batteries connected into series, I would highly recommend getting one of these balancers, and that will make this 100% maintenance free and keep everything in tip-top shape, fully balanced, maximum capacity available. So what do you guys think? I always say the smartest people are in my comment section, and I know there's going to be a lot of you that's got to have ideas and thoughts and suggestions for this setup. So love to hear from you. Leave them down in the comments. Let's help each other out to learn and grow and do better. We have links down in the description to all the stuff you've seen here today, so be sure and check those out. I'm also going to have a link to a spreadsheet with links to all of these battery manufacturers that I've worked with. And it'll all be in one easy to find location, and you can go through and check the pricing on all these units. And that should help you be able to find the best deal out there. Hope this video was helpful. If you can't tell, videos like these take a lot of time and a lot of effort to put together. So I would sure appreciate your compensation by liking the video, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. Those 4 things are 100% free for you to do, but they benefit the channel in a tremendous way. And I would really, really appreciate that. Thanks for sticking with me on this project. We've got a whole bunch of additional things coming up. Namely, we're going to do some serious testing on this setup. See how it performs over time. We're going to really push the inverter hard. It's not going to be your average, load testing or whatever. We're going to be actually running real world scenarios with this. So that should be pretty exciting. I've also got AC coupled solar coming into this, and I'm going to be doing a video about that coming up here as well that you won't want to miss. Sure appreciate all of you guys. Stay safe, and we'll catch you all next time.